let's have a look at some of the possible plant and style trends coming up for 2024. So there are some really fun styles, a super special plant, and quite an unusual one coming up. So I've looked at the recommendations from different houseplant retailers, leading organisations that really influence the media and distribution of houseplants, as well as what I've noticed in the market over the last few months. Now this is a hint of one that's coming up shortly, and let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the trends that I touch on. Also, if you're aware of any other trending plants or styles that you think will be big in 2024, let me know in the comments below. So before we touch on any specific plants, let's set the backdrop with the style trends that we should be seeing in 2024. Now these styles have been put forward by the Flower Council Holland, and these are a very large organisation that work with distributors and growers, with houseplant retailers, be them in person or online, and really influence the marketing efforts of houseplants and flowers. So these trends aren't specifically just for plants and flowers, they do cover home accessories and wider home decor too. So while some of these trends aren't necessarily completely new, you will see more of them in 2024. So the first style trend is called Meaningful Earth, and as the name suggests, it's all about those natural shapes, colours and structures that we can bring into our homes and bring ourselves closer to nature. So this one is quite a dark but calming colour scheme, something reminiscent of a dark woodland for example, with the dark browns and maybe dark greys, but also you've got the deep greens and bold but still natural colours to give a little bit of contrast and brighten that space up. So then when it comes to shapes and textures, this really is about natural textures, so maybe things that are unfinished, things that are made of natural materials, things that might be a little bit rougher around the edges or maybe asymmetrical that have been naturally made rather than man-made. So possible plants to support this style are things like begonias, particularly Begonia rex, that can have lots of unusual shaped leaves that look a little bit rough and possibly unkempt at times depending on how they're growing, different types of mosses that you can do some quite creative displays with, as well as possibly things like staghorn ferns that really give those woodland and natural vibes. So this next one is almost the opposite of the Meaningful Earth, and it's all about a celebration through colour. So this is Viva La Vida, and it's all about the colours that you will find naturally in flowers, so things like oranges, pinks, reds, yellows, but bringing them all together into a really colourful mix. So you could find some really great plants for this and really brighten up your home with things like gardenias, indoor roses, St. Paulias, maybe even Easter and Christmas cacti, depending on the time of the year that you are plant shopping and when those flowers are out. So this is also about creating energising and uplifting spaces. So when it comes to things like materials, you can use things with lots of patterns, use a contrast of things like hard materials like iron against things with frills and tassels for example, so you've got a real fun mix of things going on within that space along with all of that fantastic colour. So if you like the look of Viva La Vida but wanted even more colour, then playful construction could be the style trend for you. So this is all about bold colours, the brighter, the bolder, the better, all mixed together in all sorts of combinations to create these really fun and almost psychedelic spaces if you look at all of those colours and even patterns working together. So when it comes to finishes, it is a little bit more focused on the man-made side of things, so perfect finishes, smoother, glossier finishes to brighten up the space, as well as an element of engineering, so things that maybe have a hidden purpose or a different usage to what they initially look like. So one example there is the curved pipes that are actually vases, and when we look at the shapes, as I've just mentioned, this could also include lots of curves and it's very bold, so also lots of very big rounded objects and circles. So when we're looking at possible plants for this, we could be looking at things like anthurium lilies with those wonderful bright large rounded flowers, as well as things like bromeliads, which come in all sorts of different varieties in incredibly bright colours that you could really mix and match and show off lots of plant colour within those sorts of spaces. So if that last style seemed a little bit too much, then this next style could be the perfect one for you, and it's called Gentle Paradox. So this one still involves bringing in colour to the space, but instead of bold colours, it's about pastels against a backdrop of natural tones. So things like your beiges, stones, greys and whites, with those wonderful pastels to create a very calming and tranquil space. As the name suggests, Gentle Paradox, when it comes to the shapes and textures, it's about creating slight paradoxes or contrasts between those different elements. So using things like hard surfaces and hard lines, a little bit of geometry in there against some softer shapes or softer textures to really create a flow between the elements and the brochure describes this space as almost dreamlike with how everything flows together. So then when we're looking at plants for this space, we might look at those that would be considered a little bit softer, so things like maidenhair ferns, asparagus ferns, hanging plants, depending on how they're displayed, as well as things that have a little bit of colour, but maybe those softer tones or pastels, so possibly different colours of orchids for example, to really support that sort of elegance and simplicity of the space. So now let's look at some of the more plant related trends, and this will touch on some types of plants, some specific plants, as well as plant practices that we will be involved in as plant enthusiasts, and hopefully you'll see some links back to the styles that we've just been talking about and how those plants can be used in those different spaces. So we'll start with the one that I alluded to earlier, and this one is for cacti, not a specific variety, but all of the different varieties that are available. So over the last few months I have noticed these have become much more widely available in lots of the, as I said, the different varieties in places like supermarkets, homeware stores and online. So it's going back to basics a little bit, because I think even if people aren't houseplant enthusiasts, many people have had or still have cacti because they are those, or what are described as, hard to kill plants. So I think these are making a resurgence. They definitely have been over the last few months, which I think will carry on into 2024. Now on similar lines to the last one in terms of availability increasing over the last few months, this next one is the Alocasia Frydek variegata. As you can see, it's a stunning variegated plant with those wonderful bright leaves, and this one did become available a little while ago, but it was quite hard to come by and had a very high price point. That has since changed slightly. It's still expensive, but it has since gone down as availability has increased. So I've started to see these available in more houseplant retailers, as well as different size plants becoming available. So smaller plants obviously for a lower price, as well as the larger plants if you want to pay more. And just like any plant trend, I think that will continue into 2024 with greater availability and that price lowering even further. Who wouldn't want one of these in their collection? These do look like stunning variegated plants. However, they are alocasias and they are variegated, so they might be a little bit more fussy when it comes to their plant care. Now this next one I've touched on a few times in previous videos, as this one has been on a bit of a roller coaster over the last few years. So this is the Monstera obliqua Peru, and this one, as you'll know, during the plant craze a few years ago, this one was very hard to come by and would have cost you thousands if you did happen to find one that was available. Whereas earlier this year there was a mass influx to the market of very cheaply priced plants for reasonably sized plants in a 12cm pot, and these were between £30 to £35. So this has balanced out a little bit now. There is still the availability there, so you can go in some in-store shops or possibly online, search for it online, and it's readily available. But the price has increased now, maybe 2 to 3 times that, to about 59 or high 50s to about £100 for the same size plant. So I think that's maybe just balanced out with the supply and demand with the pricing there as well. So I think with these plants, they will continue to be popular in 2024 as more people start to spot them and see them, whether they are the houseplant enthusiasts that wanted one during the plant craze and couldn't get hold of them and haven't yet got one, or maybe those that are new houseplant enthusiasts and they are now just readily available, so they might not necessarily be aware of the challenges of getting them previously and just add them to their collection naturally, because they are wonderful looking plants too, so who wouldn't want them in their collection? Although just like the Alocasia Frydek, they can be quite fussy, so you do have to bear that in mind if you haven't got one and you're thinking about getting one. Now this next one is the super special plant I was talking about at the start of the video, and this is one that I've only recently become aware of myself when doing the research for this video. So this is the Philodendron Gigantti Blizzard, and as you can see, it's another really wonderful variegated plant with all of that wonderful colour splashed across the leaves. And not only that, but the leaves can grow incredibly large and it can produce a large plant when it matures. So this really is a statement variegated plant. Now I'd be interested in knowing whether you've seen these before, whether that be in store or online. I've said in previous videos I really like collecting different philodendrons, so when I came across this I've added it to the wish list, but I wasn't aware of it up until this point. And looking at availability online, it looks like there is limited availability from some retailers, but there is a price tag attached to it, so they are still quite expensive. So as with many new varieties, if indeed it is a new variety, and variegated plants in particular, they do have a lot of interest, which increases demand. So while that could affect price initially, hopefully the supply will catch up with that, they'll become more available and the price will drop. and then hopefully I can add it to my collection for less. So I will bide my time before I tick it off the wish list, but I think with all of that, that will prompt that plant to potentially be a trending plant in 2024. Now for this next one, if you are a houseplant enthusiast, you're probably already ahead of the game with this one. This one is hanging plants, so not a specific plant, but just having more hanging plants, using them to create that jungle vibe, and this really links into some of the style trends we were talking about earlier. So the meaningful earth, creating that sort of woodland, natural look inside, or the gentle paradox, using the trailing vines to create a softer look to contrast against the hardness of the solid lines or walls, for example. So this one isn't necessarily something new, but it might see an increase when we look at interior design and styling with using houseplants in 2024. So similar to the last one, this one also links to the same styles of meaningful earth and gentle paradox, and it's about maximising the vertical space and greenery in your home. So there is an expectation that there'll be more interest in living walls in 2024, so these can come in many different shapes and sizes depending on the space that you've got available, the budget, and also the plants that you want to display. So you can of course make these yourself. If you've got the items you need from a homeware store, you can build it yourself. Just take into account the needs of the plants that are going to go there so that they will be sustained, but also the needs of the home to make sure that it is properly waterproofed, for example, as we don't want any issues with damp in our homes, and that's just one of the issues that could arise. But you can also get ready-made kits that you can then effectively just stick to the wall or actually fix up, and they are built, designed specifically to be vertical growing kits or living walls, and they come in many different formats. Again, depending on the price that you pay, you could get more complex ones or larger ones or more simplistic ones, again really depending on your budget. So is a living wall something you'd have in your home? Or maybe if you've already got one, was it easy to install and is it easy to maintain? Let me know in the comments below. So this next one is more of a style trend, and if you are passionate about plants and have a large collection already, you may not like this one. I'm not a fan of this one myself, but each to their own, and I have been seeing a lot of this in media over the last few months, so I think it will gain more traction in 2024. And this one is about less is more. So rather than the large plant collections where every space is filled with greenery to get those jungle vibes, or lots of varieties of plants in the collection, for example, this is more about being selective with the plants that we bring into the house, having a more curated approach, and then just styling a few plants into the home as opposed to lots. So there's a bit of a balance of getting that greenery into the home that's maybe a bit more manageable, and possibly a bit more with statement plants, for example, if they are standalone or there are fewer of them, and just not necessarily the overkill with greenery wherever you can fit new plants. Now I'm more of a fan of the overkill approach, but I don't know about you. Let me know whether you prefer a few plants or you like to collect as many varieties as possible, or maybe even specific varieties if you are a fan of one specific variety. For example, I like collecting philodendrons. So this next plant is going to have a spotlight on it for 2024, and it's the African violet or St. Paulia. So the National Garden Bureau have named it as the flower of the year. Now for 2023 their flower of the year was the orchid, and this was also picked up by Flower Council Holland, so it was really pushed in marketing efforts, and we did see an influx in orchids hitting the market this year. So if the same happens again, we will be seeing a lot more of those African violets in the shops to buy in 2024. So the great thing about these plants, when we're looking at those styles we spoke about earlier, they pretty much fit in all four of those styles with whichever one you maybe like the look of, as you can get them with bright leaves or dark leaves, as well as lots of different shades of colour. So you really can make them fit whatever style you are going for. And another great thing about them is they're incredibly easy to propagate. So if you only got one or two, you could multiply them yourself pretty easily. So now onto the unusual one, and this one I've seen from multiple sources, as well as seeing more posts about it on social media. And this isn't technically houseplant related, but it is something that you can grow indoors. So it's all about growing your own mushrooms, and you can actually get kits with everything that you need to grow your own mushrooms at home. So is that something that you've ever considered or would consider in growing your own? So unlike the ones that you obviously find in the wild that can be dangerous if you don't know what you're looking for, then these ones actually come with an edible variety of mushroom, so you know exactly what you're getting, and then you obviously set it up to grow and harvest your own at home. So if you ever want to diversify your indoor plant collection, why not go for mushrooms in 2024? So this next one is more about plant practices or plant accessories depending on how you look at it, and it's the expected increase in interest in using plant technology to help us with what we might consider our plant chores, or just to give the best possible care to our plants. So this could be using things like grow lights, which we know is a growing market, and also things like moisture meters or maybe even humidifiers, again just to make sure that we are giving our plants the best conditions and helping them thrive. So do you have any of those items that you currently use, or are they on your wish list to help you with your plant care in the future? Will they be things you'll be investing in 2024? And this next one is new to me. I only came across it when I was doing the research for this video. The Garden Media Group have come up with their own colour of the year, and that is Cyber Lime. So as the name suggests, it is a very bright, vibrant, light green colour or yellow to green colour, and this is specifically related to plants and gardening. So this is relatively easy to get in your collection, of course. Many new leaves, regardless of the plant, will have a very light green colour, but also what you might find is if you're houseplant shopping, or maybe if you're in the garden centre, you might find more displays focused on the lighter green plants to try and meet this trend. However, as far as I'm aware, the Garden Media Group are predominantly focused in the US. I could be wrong, but you might see more of that within garden centres and plant shops within the US. But I would be interested to know if you are from elsewhere, for example I'm from the UK, if you are seeing any of this trend towards Cyber Lime, be that now or in the near future, please do drop a comment below to see if it has spread worldwide or just into different countries outside of the US. If you did want to look into it further, I'll link some of the style resources that I've used in the description below. So did any of those trends surprise you, or are you looking forward to what could be coming up in 2024? If you are aware of any others, then please do share them in the comments below and I'll keep an eye out for them. If you have found the video interesting, consider subscribing, as I'll have new videos every week on houseplant related content. And I am currently running a giveaway, as it is the season of giving, at least at the time of making this video, so I've detailed that in my previous video, which I've linked at the end if you would like to watch that next and get involved. It also covers my houseplant journey and my top 10 video highlights of 2023. If you've got any questions, you can put them in the comments below and I'll respond to everyone. And as always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.